My name is Perry. I'm originally from Hull in Yorkshire. I'm currently working in Leicester at the moment as a full-time grower, and I also study in soil biology, and I'm certified to give lab assessments, and I'm currently doing a consultant course as well on top of that, so I'm very busy. Yeah. So healthy soil for me comes in three phases. You've got what's called the parent material, so you've got the sand, the silt and the clay. What I feel is one of the most important is the soil microbiology. That isn't just bacteria and fungi, that also includes the full soil food web, which is also used in the nematodes and the protozoa. And then the third thing for the healthy soil is having the organic matter. So this is the food that feeds the microbiology. Unhealthy soil for me, when I just talked about healthy soil, we talked about the parent material, the sand, the silt and the clay. So this is what I would call dirt. This is the unhealthy soil. What that means is it's missing the key ingredients of the life force, the biology, and also then the organic matter is not as important because you're not feeding the biology. So all you're left with is sand, silt and clay. And this is what I would consider unhealthy soil. With poor soil health, there's some indicators that you can see straight away. One of them is the color of the soil. So you don't need any fancy equipment like a microscope, which I do use. Just by looking at the soil, you can tell by the color. So what we're looking for is a 70% cacao color. So this straight away is a good indicator that you've got a healthy soil. So if it's not that, if it's like a gray color, sometimes it's a very light gray color, straight away you can start to question how healthy the soil is. The next is the texture. If it doesn't kind of like crumble in your hands and stick, but then also open up and fall in your hands, that's another indicator of unhealthy soil. Lastly would be the smell. For a healthy soil, it wants to smell like a old growth forest. So when you smell that, it should be like the floor of the forest. Each case is different, but most soils are lacking in soil biology. So there's a couple of ways you can add biology to soil. You can add compost, but then you would first need to make sure that that compost has life in it. So you can get a lab test to see if the biology is in there. You can also take compost teas and extract, and you can dilute them in water, and then you can spray that water or drench the soil with the water, which should be full of the biology also. So that's one way that you can improve soil. Growing beans to improve soil quality is a great way because we're looking for the fixing of nitrogen in the soil. Some soils are lacking nitrogen. So what you can do is if you grow the beans, you're looking to grow the nodules on the beans that are attached to the roots. What you want to look out for is that these root nodules are a pink color. So you can pull one of the plants, check that the nodules are like a red pink, and this is an indicator that it's fixing the nitrogen in the soil, which then the plant can use. If they're not pink, there's still some more work to do. So what you can do is you can burst those nodules open, and they should pour out a red-pink color. So this color is, if you think of blood, this is because it's associated with a hemoglobin. There's some plant-based companies out there who actually put this into a science lab, and they take that hemoglobin from the plant and put it into their food products for it to taste like meat. If you have good soil, your plants and your food should receive all the nutrients available. And that's because what we want in the soil is the microbiology. And it's the microbiology that has a relationship with the plant. See, what happens with nutrient cycling is the plant, by sending sugars into the soil, actually dictates to the biology which nutrients it needs. So it's a really interesting relationship that it has. The actual fungus and the bacteria will go off into the sand, silt, the clays. They will mine the nutrients out of those crystalline structures, and they'll bring back those nutrients to the plant. So whatever the plant wants, the plant gets. But it can only happen if the biology is in there. So this is why it's really important that we have the soil microbiology. Otherwise, what's going to happen is the plant will send the coded messages in the forms of sugar into the soil, but there's no life there to take those messages to get the nutrients. There have been some studies done which have shown that using fertilizers to force feed plants didn't actually give the plants more nutrients. And that was because the biology wasn't present to transform those nutrients to the plants. But then there are studies which show if you add biology to the system, then those nutrients are in the plants. So we really want to, again, get the biology in the systems to provide the plants with the nutrients. Does the soil have seasons? Yes, it does in a way, because what happens is if you have diverse microbiology in the soil, certain microbes will wake up or go to sleep, go dormant, depending on the season. So they're quite susceptible to temperature and moisture. So we always have biology available no matter what season it is. We just got to make sure that the biology is in there. So with our gardening practices, we need to make sure we're adding or keeping alive a diverse spectrum of microbiology. Climate change and soil health is such a fantastic topic, because what we're starting to understand is that it's actually how we treat soil can affect the climate change. One of those things is to do with the carbon. So different microbes in the soil will either release carbon or store carbon. So if we have soils just full of bacteria, bacteria don't really store carbon that well, so they blow it off into the atmosphere. Whereas if we take fungi will bring carbon into their bodies, they will store it into their bodies so they can keep on sequestering carbon. With our practices, what we do is if we are ploughing through our fields, or if we're in a garden setting, we're using our spade and we're digging into the soil, we end up killing the long strands of the fungal hyphae, which then means then they release the carbon. So it depends on our gardening practices of whether we're sequestering carbon or releasing carbon. Also the way we compost as well. So if compost and soils are going anaerobic, which they often do, either due to compaction or just the compost hasn't been managed very well, it will start to release methane or nitrous oxide. And these have more of a detrimental effect of blocking the heat in the atmosphere or radiating it back to the earth. These are some of the ways in which soil can really help with climate change. Soil colour and climate change, what's the relationship? When I often receive soil samples, I can often tell straight away if a soil is dominated by bacteria or if it's dominated by fungus. When soils are dominated by bacteria, they're often like a light grey colour, and soils which are often dominated by fungus are often a dark chocolate colour. So straight away I can see whether it's bacterial dominated or fungal dominated. Soils that are dominated by fungus will sequester carbon and hold carbon, so that's suggesting that it's going to help with the climate change. Soils that are grey and bacterial dominated, bacteria don't hold on to carbon, they blow it off in the atmosphere, so this is like a contribution to the climate change. So yeah, you can tell by the colour of the soil how that's affecting climate change. If you want to monitor soil, the basic way is using your human senses, so that can be looking at the colour of the soil, feeling the texture, and smelling. If you want to go a little bit deeper and know for certain what's going on from a microbiology point of view, the number one tool for me is the compound microscope, which is what I use. So with the microscope, what you can do is you can take a dilution of the soil, put it under the lens, and you can see what organisms are in your soil from the soil food web point of view. So that can be the bacteria, the fungi, the protozoa, and the nematodes. So you want to see those players in the soil, and when you're looking at it down the microscope, you can easily see if they're there or if they're not. And then you can also assess the numbers of the biology in there, what's the biomass of those organisms. So that's the best way. But if you haven't got a microscope, you can just use, as I said, the senses, but then it's not as specific. Soil texture and drainage, again, is really encouraged by the soil microbiology. So the first layer are the bacteria. So the bacteria, they have these glues, and they'll pull together the aggregates to make what's called microaggregates, creating spaces in your soil for the water flow, the air, and also the roots. Next to come along is the fungi. The fungi also have glues, and they'll take those microaggregates and they'll build macroaggregates. So they start to create more spaces in your soil for the water, the roots, and also the airflow as well. So again, the biology, big key players in creating soil texture. So garden practices for water retention. One of the most popular ways is using some kind of mulch. So that can be wood chips, it can be leaves, it can be grass clippings, anything what's covering the soil. The kind of rule of thumb is we don't want to leave soil bare. One of the other things is also to have actually living plants in the soil at all times, because what this does is they're feeding the microbes in the soil with their sugars, so it's keeping the biology alive. Next, what's happening is the biology is creating the soil structure, which also helps with the water retention. So there's things you can do topically to stop the water from evaporating. And then below ground, the microbes are creating the structure to hold the water as well. The interesting things about microbes also is that they can affect the pH in the soil locally to where they are. So a bacteria, for example, will release a glue, and that glue will be alkaline, so that can affect the pH there. Whereas fungus, they release an acidic glue, so they will start to balance the acidity of the soil. So depending on whether you've got a soil dominated in bacteria or fungus, or whether it's just localized in the area, you can have different pHs throughout your soil because of the microbiology in the soil. The best tool that I use to assess soil is the microscope, because the beauty of using the microscope is that you can take a soil sample solution, look at it, and you can visually see the organisms in the soil. The next best thing is you can actually count them and you can see the biomass in the soil. So it gives you a quite reliable estimate of the microbiology in your soil. So I would always go for the microscope first for a lab assessment. To ensure optimum soil health, you can really test your soil using the microscope as often or as little as you want. It's really great to, I would say, do it every couple of months so you can get a biomarker of how things are moving. The good thing with a microscope is it gives you a snapshot of what's happening. It's like getting a blood test. It can show you the health of your soil before things get too bad, or if it's moving in a good direction, you know to keep on carrying on doing the gardening practice that you're doing. So it's a really useful tool to always do. Or if you need to send out your samples to a lab and budget is an issue, then you could do them like before the season and then after the season. If I could pass on one piece of knowledge for the future to help with climate change, it would be to really take care of the fungi in the soil. The fungi really sequester the carbon and hold it into their bodies. If you want to keep the fungi alive, it means all our gardening and pharmacy practices have to change, because we don't want to be slicing and dicing these really sensitive organisms. So if there could be one thing, is to take care of the soil, have the fungus in there, and try and keep that carbon in the soil as much as possible. So when it comes down to it for me, what I see with the soil is almost like begging us to become more loving people. Like it really almost forces us to think more about what we're doing. So that develops our consciousness. Because the biology is so small, we have to take care of the small things. And then when you start taking care of the small things like pests, disease, fruit production, all the things that happen on the outside, the bigger things take care of themselves. So when you've taken care of the small things, all the bigger things that we think about, like climate change and fruit productions, the pest, disease, water flow, soil compaction, all these things, they all take care of themselves. And it was all because we took care of the soil microbiology. And you have to want to care, because you can't do this work if you don't care. You can't just do what you want. You can't just throw on chemicals. You can't just do this, because if you do, you create problems that you then have to fix. It's like the simplest solution is to take care of the small things, and then you save yourself a whole lot of work, like on the macro level. It's like it's so simple. So that's what I feel is one of the main ingredients of the future is to develop that sense of care and love for the soil. Yeah, so I'd been working as a gardener for quite a while and working with the soil. And I was listening to a podcast with Dr. Elaine Ingham, and she was talking about the soil biology. And I'd heard about soil biology before, but there was something that she said which made it seem so logical, again, talking about taking care of the small things in the soil. And it just made me cry, because it was just so beautiful and easy and such like a simple solution that we've been overlooking probably forever. It just really hit my heart. So this is why I'm so passionate about it, because it just seems like the most loving things in life are also the most logical. That's kind of how it struck my heart and why I'm so passionate about this work.